And we are back. Announcement soon. But y'all hang
Very
tight.
soon.
But y'all hang tight
Very
on.
soon.
Y'all hang
Very
tight
soon.
on that, man.
Very soon.
We got some.
Pen to paper guy.
We got a fancy fountain pen if you
You
want
got
to
a
use
fancy.
it.
You got a fancy. I think folks will like what I'm about to talk about someday. Getting close.
Yep. We on it.
Hang with. We're on it. We're on it.
We appreciate y'all for being so patient and tapping in with us here on the Doing All
Yeah.
Right. We are doing all right. We got a couple of things to talk about. We back in player mode. We don't have to watch 200 people. We just got a good was it 9? And we got 18. We got a total of 18 players that we got to break down. And I think they had a quarterback trying out or something that's not officially on the list.
Yeah. They had. That's sometimes what happens is that, and this was funny about how these practices used to be. When I first started with DallasCowboys.com, and Jason Garrett was like it was the Jason Garrett administration.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, like, they actually had like real workouts.
Yeah.
Like I remember Des Bryant getting sick at the workout, like so much running. And it was competitive periods, and these kids just weren't, I mean, they go right from, like they do like the pro days to not working out to the draft. And the next thing you know, Garrett's got them running pass routes and all. I mean, and it's a competitive, but you needed guys to, like, sometimes you'd sign guys to just throw passes, just not even like, oh, hey, he's a kind of a bullpen guy, come in and and try out for us and stuff like that. I remember one time, God, I wish I could remember this kid's name. It's probably good I don't remember his name. He was so poor at throwing the ball that, like, Wade Wilson had to step in and be the quarterback. They're like, okay, hey, you go ahead. You could just kind of, go. I got this drill. And like Wade Wilson, the quarterback coach, was like throwing the drills and stuff like that, because sometimes the bullpen quarterback guy just can't get it done. So
it's a damn shame, Brian. Bro, I'm glad.
But that's what they practice, man. I mean, like that, like really, like you could get something like there were one-on-ones and DB one-on-ones with receivers, and it was Garrett ran some good practices for you to evaluate for sure.
Shouts out to Jason Garrett.
Yeah,
man,
shouts out.
Bryan Broaddus, man. I'm just, I'm keeping up with the content and all that. Man, it make a little sense when I saw it, Bryan, bro. Old Schottenheimer wanted to do a press conference by himself. He didn't want to get cut off by Brother Jerry. He didn't want any messages to get confused. He just went out there and ran his old press conference by himself. Now, Bryan, let me just ask you a question. You've been a front office draft the players guy. You've been that dude before. Watch the film. Dude. You've been that guy before.
You're that guy too.
I appreciate you.
You just hadn't had a chance to. You just had a chance to get fired doing it.
Crown Global.
Yeah.
Bryan, dude, what's the feel when a new coach come up in here and he's like, you know what, the way that it's been done ain't the way that I'm about to do it now.
Right.
And not only does he say this is the way that we about to do it,
right,
he doubles and triples and quadruples down on it.
Yeah.
And then he drafts a group of kids to match exactly what the hell he been talking about, Bryan Broaddus.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's Brian Schottenheimer, as we all know from a football background, dad was a big-time coach. I mean, as an assistant, in Cleveland, the Chargers, even with the Commanders, for a year there. And but I'll tell you, he comes from that background, and I think the one advantage that Brian Schottenheimer has is being here for the time he has. He saw really all the mistakes that maybe Mike McCarthy made. Maybe he saw some things that he liked from Mike McCarthy. Maybe he saw a couple of things he's like, it's a good idea. If I'm ever a head coach, let me mark that down in my Andy Reid notebook here. That's what Andy did. Andy took notes on everything. that's made Andy a great coach. Go interview. And he would like, well, this is what I want to do. And this is what, and then Andy was going to get a job just from his notes. But the thing with Schottenheimer, he probably saw some of the things and how things were handled with the players probably saw how things were handled in the locker room. Probably there were things that he saw that, like, boy, this makes a lot of sense. I like what Coach McCarthy's done here. I like what Dan Quinn did. That's a pretty cool idea. And then there's like, I would never try and do that again. That was a terrible idea. Can't believe we did it. And so he knows how the Joneses operate. He knows how Will McClay works. He knows where everything is in the building. The trainers know him. The equipment staff knows him. The staff at the dining hall, everybody knows Coach Schottenheimer, and he knows them. That's a good advantage for him, because he could kind of know, okay, I could trust these people. I can't trust this group. So he's able to kind of navigate those things. But when he came out and started talking about the type of players and the type, it kind of goes back. It reminded me of a little bit of his dad. His dad had that kind of that demeanor, that tough demeanor and stuff like that. But this guy, you could see he bounces around on the practice field. He's patting people on the back, but he's coaching. He's noticing everything. That's his job. But I think it really does go back to the advantage he has is he knows what has worked for this organization and what absolutely they do not ever need to do again. So good for him. I think he's realized that, and I think he's building that plan, at least initially, to kind of to reflect that.
See, Brian, we like peas and carrots.
Simpatico.
We right here, Bryan Broaddus.
Yeah.
I was doing my stream earlier, Brian, because I be working all day just like you. I was doing my stream earlier, man.
We can't get away from this work, can we?
It's all right. And
yeah,
Brian,
it's all good.
I was thinking when Schottenheimer was doing his interviews and he was talking to old Jerry.
Yeah.
And he knows exactly what the old administration was and what it missed on.
Yes, sir.
And you take that and you pair it with the messaging that he's giving you now and some of the players that he's drafted. Do you think that maybe in that pitch to Brother Jones and them, that Schottenheimer was like, man, we're lacking leadership here. We're just lacking leadership here. Jane Slater came on our own show, on our own Doing All Right podcast, and she was like, man, where the leaders at?
Yeah.
You lose Tank Lawrence, you lose Jordan Lewis, you lose Zach Martin. Tyron wasn't here, but he retires anyway, Brian.
Yeah.
Do you think Schottenheimer went to Jerry and said, man, this whole Mozzie thing, this Kelvin Joseph thing, Tyler Guyton, this Sam Williams thing, this all happened on Mike McCarthy's watch. This is what I said early on my live stream, Brian, and you could just
I would also put Dan Quinn into that too, by the way.
Sure, 100%.
And let's be honest. Let's be honest here too. Dan Quinn, some of the questionable, maybe some and I'm not trying to hurt Dan Quinn here. I'm just saying there was some questionable, maybe character stuff.
Yeah.
I saw where the commander signed Isaiah Bond.
Oh, I see.
Maybe and maybe that will work out for them.
Yeah.
Maybe that will work out. There's a lot of teams that didn't have the Texas receiver on their board, and so some of the things, some of the attitudes, maybe some of the willingness to take on certain players. I'll never forget John Snyder, and I asked him about working with Pete Carroll. And I said, John, man, the Green Bay, when we were Green Bay, man, the character and all that, he goes, let me tell you what, Pete Carroll's convinced me that if I draft these guys, he'll coach them. He everywhere he's been, he's coached guys that might be 1 foot out of bounds. And I think that Dan Quinn, I think there were some fights that Will McClay took on for Dan Quinn. I think the Mozzie Smith, I think when he stood up in that room, in that draft room, and started talking about the virtues of Mozzie Smith over Bergeron, I think that was with Dan Quinn in mind. I think that Will and Dan had a very close relationship, and so, that's, maybe there's some stuff to that, but Dan Quinn has got his fingerprints on some of these, some of the absolutely. And folks, I'm not trying to take a swing at Dan Quinn, but I'm just saying sometimes previous regimes have an idea about a player. You could go back to, the Tristan Hills and or Rod Marinelli. Rod Marinelli went down to Orlando, did that whole workout, did everything. Oh, this is our guy. Da 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 da. And then what happened when he got here? He turned his back on the kid. Yeah. And Tristan Hill just went on the side. So when you start to assign I'm not going to say blame, when you assign the fault of why a player didn't have success. Personnel guys take a lot of it. Will McClay takes a lot of it, but the coaches do have a hand. You saw the other day in that draft how much the coaches are really involved here.
Yeah.
You saw that. So with all that being said, yeah, I think Schotty, I think Jerry encouraged the coaches to be involved. I think Schotty initially really didn't want the coaches to be involved, but he gave in to Jerry, and because Jerry likes opinion. Mm-hmm. Jerry absolutely likes opinion about these players, and I think Schottenheimer, for his first draft, if you will remember, I'm sorry, I'm going long-winded here, but I'm trying to kind of carry it. I remember getting into the second night of the draft. I got into the studio early. I just beat you by a little bit, and they had the War Room cam up. And I just vividly remember Brian Schottenheimer standing by that board. And you couldn't see the board, but you saw Schottenheimer by where their board is. And Will McClay was standing behind his chair. And you could see, and Stephen Jones was even involved. And you could see that Brian Schottenheimer obviously was having a conversation with Will McClay, and Stephen Jones was listening the whole time. And I guarantee you that Brian Schottenheimer was talking about just what you were saying. Hey, this guy right here, Ezraku, right? That guy. Yeah, if we can't get Junkins, and we can't get, if we can't get, they're really they're holding on to, Burden. We can't get Burden, and we can't get Junkins. Listen, okay, this Ezraku, we got him right there. We're good with this. I could, and Will was trying to talk about his stack, because I saw him the way he was moving his hands. But that's what Brian Schottenheimer, to your point, the type of player that he was looking for, or the type of player his staff was looking for. He was in his very first draft, not his very first draft with the Dallas Cowboys, but his very first draft as the head coach. He was trying to talk Will McClay and Stephen Jones through some ideas he had. So you're right. I think in the big picture of things, he realized how important this first draft was for him, and able to kind of get his program started the right way.
I told my audience earlier, Brian, that video that came out, Will McClay was having the Mozzie and Bergeron conversation.
Yes, sir.
And, Mike really wasn't all that active in that conversation. He just told
Not at all.
He told some goofy little joke that nobody laughed at. He laughed at it. And Will just continued to give his dissertation or whatever about why we should draft Mozzie. I don't know what the conversation was like. I don't know if Will was vouching for Walter Nolan and maybe Schottenheimer was this.
Yeah.
But at least we know that Schottenheimer had say here. And if all this happened under Mike McCarthy's watch and he didn't contribute to none of it, I just wonder if maybe it was purposeful that Schottenheimer goes so heavy with the character. Maybe he told Jerry, and I don't know, but maybe he told Jerry, man, look, all this happened under the last administration. Look, I don't want guys that's rapping. I don't want guys that, that we got to convince to get up and work out. I don't, Mozzie looked disinterested every time. His head always, Mozzie looked disinterested every time you see. Maybe Schottenheimer vouching, because when you hear these guys speak and you hear him talk about, Ezraku sounds like a very focused young dude.
Yeah,
Booker, Revel, they sound like focused young dudes. Blue, focused young dudes. I think it's a trend that we just picked up on, Brian. I think him drafting that way, or him leading the Cowboys in the draft, I think it was very intentional.
Yeah, I think that he wanted it. He wanted them to know where he stood on some players. I do. I think I was privy to, and I couldn't hear the sound. I just saw the reaction, and it looked like to me a conversation where Will was trying to walk Schotty through how this thing could potentially fall. And I think Schotty was probably making a point. Well, if we get to that, let's think about this. And then Stephen Jones, you could see him chiming in. And when somebody does the hand like up, up, up kind of a thing, or down, 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 you're kind of thinking that, okay, he's talking about the stack is what he was doing. So there, when you talk to people over there about how things fell for them, they weren't expecting. I think you and I have had this conversation, I believe, but if for anybody that's new to our show, welcome, by the way. They didn't expect McMillan to be there. They just didn't. They were preparing for him to not be there. And when you talk about Booker, that was their guy. That's the way it fell to them. And and then the whole thing with Ezeraku, are they holding on Burton? Are they holding on Junkins? Next thing you know, those guys are gone. Boom, here's our next guy. Go to it. And they just had their board set up that way. But to your point again, a lot of really quality character guys. I was talking with a guy today about Ravel, and I said, hey, how's the best thing that could happen to that kid is him coming to work with Britt Brown, because Britt will get him in, and the word is that him and Britt have already hit it off well, and they're going to fight like hell to be ready for the start of the season. That's what that's the goal. And, and so, and that kid's that kind of guy. And that's the kind of kid you draft. He's got he's a hungry, type of a player that never, had much, but man, when he plays, he plays with a lot of passion. And I could see, like I said, I could see him and Britt and those guys, next thing you know, we're going to be out there in Oxnard and we're going to see him line up and probably play some meaningful snaps for you. Character guys. You're right. You're right about that. Character guys.
Talking about some meaningful snaps, Bryan Broaddus. We don't care about this walkthrough they just did last weekend, Bryan.
No, not too much. Not too much.
When we get to training camp, it's all gonna turn up a little bit, man. We had 3 players to talk about.
Yeah, we did.
Trayshawn Holden, formerly from Oregon. Elijah Clark, formerly Syracuse, and Ravaldo Farweather, formerly Auburn.
Take your pick on who you want to talk about first.
I was gonna ask you who you think I like the most.
Oh, I see what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Give me tight ends. Give me tight end, safety, wide receiver.
You're on to something, Bryan Broaddus. But let's go tight end, receiver, then safety.
Okay. I thought maybe you liked the way that kid played a little downhill for you.
He does play downhill, but I think you can
find that. Play downhill.
I think you can find that in a lot of people, Bryan Broaddus. I think that's pretty common here.
Yeah. Well, do me a favor then.
Yeah.
Tell me about the wide receiver then.
Trayshawn Holden. I don't take notes, Bryan. So I'm just looking at you.
Oh, I know. Hey, thank you for working on a draft with me, man. Appreciate you.
Many more.
Yeah. I used to think it's like, what you used to remind me of, Voch?
What's that?
I always hate going to a restaurant and people don't write down my order.
Yeah.
I hate that. Because the minute that you don't put
the
minute you don't put my French onion soup in front of me, I'm going to remind you to write down the damn order next time. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, man. I couldn't remind you to put my French onion soup in front of me. Man.
You better write this shit down. Quit playing.
I'm telling you, man, I used to those steak places, man. You used to walk in those steakhouses. Those dudes would take a table full of orders and they'd get every damn thing right. And I was like, okay, that's why these guys are making big tips, but yeah, the minute you don't write down my order at a restaurant, I now challenge you to make sure that my French onion soup is right in front of me and not two doors down from me.
And Brian's a fancy man. I'm sure you're a good tipper too. If
I'm bougie. Oh, I am so bougie. I was voted most bougiest at our station.
Yeah, what it is.
It is what it is, man. I'm a bougie dude. I admit it. Yeah, tell me about this wide receiver without notes.
This Holden
because you've done it all year.
Brian, this Holden kid was pretty interesting, man. I felt like he was good enough to be drafted. I think what he's good at. Yeah. I think it's enough to make him a usable player as opposed to a player, because some guys that got drafted, like Tesla, right? For example, Isaac Tesla. I didn't see him produce
Arkansas,
all that much.
yeah.
Brandon Holden at least produced, and it wasn't crazy production all year or whatever, but that's just Oregon's offense, and that's how they get down. The first thing I noticed was that he caught all kinds of passes of all different angles, so that makes me feel good about his hands and his ability to catch. Brian, he wasn't very fast, but he got downfield a lot. And he tracked the ball really well, and I was very impressed with his ability to track the ball. And I made this point when I did the video on him. There was this one play during the season last year. Jonathan Mingo kind of lost the ball in the air. You know what I'm saying? I don't think Trayshawn Holden does that when he's working vertical. I don't think he's much of a route runner, but I thought he was really physical with the routes that he did run. I thought when he ran slants and somebody would try to grab and hold on to him, I thought, get your ass off me, and he'll keep running the slant. Or if somebody tried to jam him up, I thought he got off a press really well. I didn't see him get off the line of scrimmage all that great. I saw false steps. I saw some weird looking hips from time to time, Bryan Broaddus. But once he got going, he was good to go. I said great hands. Also, Brian, I thought he was a very willing and above average blocker.
Yes, sir.
And that could be something that can buy him a little bit of time in this league here, being a willing and above average blocker. But besides that, Brian, I didn't see a guy with a whole bunch of speed. He got size, but I didn't really see him use a whole bunch of that size. Most of his touchdowns, or just a lot of touchdowns I saw, he was just in the back of the end zone catching the ball somewhere.
Yeah.
So I guess he has the ability to find places and put his feet down and body control and all that kind of stuff. I think he's pretty decent with that. And with the ball in his hand, I did think that he was able to get a couple extra yards when people try to tackle him or whatever, right? So he did kind of thump you a little bit. Tough runner. But I didn't see a special player at all. But he's an undrafted free agent, Brian, so that makes a little bit of sense. He probably would have been a guy that would be either at the bottom of my fives or in the extras. I thought he would be like right up under Kobe Hudson, maybe under Pat Bryant, like under some of those guys.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But I wouldn't think that he would be an undrafted guy. But go ahead, Brian, please.
Yeah, no. Where I will disagree with you, Voch, a little bit is that I think the thing, like I said, he's 6'2", he's 211. He was a 4-star recruit out of Alabama, and he played 3 years in Tuscaloosa, and then moved on to Eugene. I felt like, though, that you're right about 6'2", 211, the large target. I saw the digs, the crossers, the back of the end zone, the sideline stuff. I didn't feel like he had really the most natural hands. Okay. I saw the couple of snaps where he was kind of fighting it a little bit or double catching it a little bit. Sure. So it wasn't like Terrence Williams body catching stuff. Yeah. But there was a couple of times where I felt like it was kind of a little bit of a double catch. But the hands to me were fine. It's just sometimes you fight the ball a little bit. I think his size really just allows him to run through jams and press more than beating them with quickness and elusive moves. I think you pointed that out. The coordination of the release, the route entrance, all those stuff. I mean, those are things that you lack speed. Some, like you said, how sudden did he really play? But I did see that ability to kind of weave through when he caught the ball, to kind of weave through defenders until they tackled him, But, he's the thing that's going to, there's things that are going to, I think, make him limited. Sure. Is I don't think he's particularly quick, but at 6'2", 211, maybe that's not his bag. And I also think that he's not overly fast. He's going to be a good-looking kid. I hope when he gets to camp, we're out there watching him. It's natural catching the ball. But the games that I watched, I kind of felt like that there was a couple times where you could see he's double catching it or struggling with it a little bit. But you're right. I think the kid should have got drafted.
Mm-hmm.
I would have put him personally like in that 5th round area, lower 5th. I think you're right. Maybe 6, somewhere between maybe a 159, maybe 162, somewhere, late 5, early 6 for Holden.
I tell you what, Brian, I don't think Holden makes a team.
No.
I think Farweather does, though, Brian.
I like some Farweather. Go ahead. Tell me about him.
I think Farweather makes this team, Bryan Broaddus. And it's simply because the tight end room and the need for your tight end room to be diverse. Mm-hmm. Fairweather's not going to be competing with Ferguson or Brevin Spanford or any guys like that or whatever. I think John Stevens is his competition. Like they're the same kind of guy.
I'm glad you said this. Because I know in the last line of my report or my notes, this guy has some John Stevens characteristics to him, and I could see why they like him. John Stevens, unfortunately, for the last 2 seasons has been unable to answer the bell when they thought he was going to make the team. This kid has very similar traits and the way he plays. And yes, if John Stevens is going to get knocked off a potential roster spot, this is probably the kid that's going to do it.
You know, Brian, it's interesting. He's 6'4", 250, right?
Yeah.
And I thought he looked a little like slimmer than that, on film. I thought he looked a little slimmer. But it's interesting when you see him run with the ball in his hands, like he's kind of hard to tackle sometimes.
He is.
That made me think about Brevin or whatever, because he was big in college. he was 260 in college, and he was hard to tackle. But Farweather is all catch radius, Bryan Broaddus.
Right.
I didn't see him fly off the line of scrimmage neither, but he's the tight end, so that's a different conversation. But I did see him catch high, catch far away, contested. If you on my hip, I'm catching it far away from you. They line him up next to the tackles. They line him up at wide receiver. They move him around a little bit. Brian, like I said earlier, I thought he was really hard to bring down sometimes. Like once he got a head of steam, he'll try to get a little wiggle in on some little reps. I don't know how much that's gonna work, but just a 250 pound character moving forward on you, I think is fantastic. They didn't give him a whole bunch of catches or targets like I would want them to, but I think if you use him properly, I think he could be a red zone guy for you, just because of the leaping ability and the catch radius and the arm length and things like that, Brian. When he made his biggest plays, I felt like he was lined up wide. But when he was lined up inside, that's when he did a lot of his blocking work and stuff like that. I really did form an appreciation for him as a blocker. When Auburn wanted to be devastating, they'll put him there and they'll make him block a corner or something. He'll beat the hell out them corners. But I didn't think he was devastating as a blocker versus edge guys. So maybe you have to be wary. And just like with John Stevens, right? Like John Stevens wouldn't block the same guys that Brevin or Luke would, right? So if he's blocking edges or like bigger players, and he's 250, so that kind of hurts me a little bit. I didn't see him block those guys all that well. But he'd be beating the hell out them corners when they line him up out there and he blocked them, Brian.
And I tell you what, I think you got the player once again nailed. This kid, just to give you a little background, he transferred from Florida International, and he moves really well for his size. He's got a long build. You mentioned, I think his hands are good. I think his hands were better than that receiver that I watched from Oregon. But he does a nice job, as we've talked about. We studied the Auburn receiver, and it was. When you watched him play, it was like the quarterbacks were ball was just all over the place. They just no consistency. So you could see this guy being able to adjust to various passes that are thrown his direction. High, low, wide, up, back. This kid, he threw them. He'd catch them all. I think he does a really good job. The hand-eye coordination was really good. I thought he had more straight line speed than really some overall kind of quickness to him. I thought he did a good job of tracking the ball. The body control down the field I thought was good. I thought working along the sidelines that he was fine. There was a couple of times where the ball was thrown over in that direction and he had to go make a play, and he did. As we know, Auburn doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of routes. That's just not a very sophisticated offense at all.
Yep.
I mean, it just not. So you see a lot of up, curl, up, hook, up, just kind of those kinds of routes. And then, maybe, but working kind of in the middle of the field. I did see some inline play, but really you're right. It's more flexed or wing. I thought he was kind of a get in the way blocker as opposed to one who's going to stick his nose in there in the action. I didn't think he was that great when he had to block as the wing or play on the move. There was a couple of times I went back just for curiosity's sake and watched the Georgia game in 2023 just to see a little bit different front. And he just didn't have that pop or that surge. It was like there's one time he had to block out on the edge and it just buckled him, and so, and then the next time it wasn't, he really wasn't interested in doing that. Like I say, his ability to catch the ball and run after the catch are his best traits for the positions. And I said this again, last line, has a John Stevens feel to his game by the way he's built and moves. So I see why they like him. That was the final note that I put on this particular player.
Sponsors, Bryan Broaddus. John Stevens. I mean, Lunda Wells is here, but
but he likes this kid a lot. If the whispers coming out of the Star is that he really, really thinks this kid's got a shot to make their team.
John Stevens better find a way to get healthy, man.
Yep, absolutely.
Because I think that's the direct.
That's a competition for sure. Very, like I'd say, my eyes tell me very similar player.
Yep.
Very similar type players is what they are.
Now, Bryan, this Elijah Clark kid could be fantastic, but I don't like safeties. You know what I'm saying? You know how I feel about it. I get sleepy.
You want me to do the safety for you?
I get sleepy watching them say, please, Bryan, go ahead and I'll just clean up whatever you don't.
You close your eyes. Yeah, close your eyes on this one. Yeah, just and think about not having to.
He's just like all the rest of them that come up and tackle, Bryan. He's just like all the rest of them.
Yeah, about that. Elijah Clark, he's 6'1", he's 188. He transferred from Rutgers. Why am I feel like every time I'm going to talk a player from now on, he's going to be somewhere else. Yeah. This guy I saw a guy that could read from depth, and I saw this guy really as a true free safety. Like he plays at depth, he sees the routes, he sees it kind of develop, and now he's driving on the ball, and he's doing everything that he has to do. So super kind of impressed with that. I thought a couple of times he got carried deep in the Clemson game, and then he was able to get over and make the play, knock the ball away. So I like that about him. I kind of felt like this guy was a downhill flyer. Yeah. When he squared up in the hole, there was some physicality to the way he plays. At 6'1", 188, you're thinking like, wow, he's playing like a much bigger guy. But I'll tell you what, man, I don't know how much I want to put him in like some slot coverage.
Yeah.
But at 4.50, I think he's got good enough speed. I think he's got some explosiveness. I think the physical profile, that's really kind of good for him. I do like the way he seems to play with a little bit of a sense of urgency. Yep. Like when he sees it, he's coming forward like I said, ball downfield. He was able to kind of get over, not high point the ball or knock it away, but like get into the receiver in order to drive them out of bounds. So the ball goes away.
Yeah.
But I do like his toughness for the way he competes. Maybe you play him at a nickel at this side, but man, I don't know how much he can really, really, really cover. Yeah. But I think he's got the range. I think he's got the toughness. I think, it's not play him down the line of scrimmage and see what happens. I think bring him from depth, let him see it, and then let him go attack. That's kind of where he's going to have to make his team, is because, like I say, if you put him in the slot, he might get exposed. Yeah. I don't know if he's big enough to carry the tight ends and stuff, but just how tough he is I think that's going to be his calling card, and see if he can make your team that way.
Coming down, tackling and thumping people, Brian. That's
kind of what he does.
That's his game.
And like I say, he's 6'1", he's 188, and he's kind of built like a corner.
Yep.
But he will try and get there in a hurry. He really will.
Like you said though, Brian, it probably is going to depend on scheme, because I wouldn't trust him in man coverage neither.
No.
He makes most of his coverage plays while in zone. Like if it's in front of him,
back,
he kind of get the float
and drive it, yes, and then turn and turn. I'm going to take a quarter, take a third, and he's able to kind of read it.
Yep.
And then be there for it.
Yeah, but turning his back
to the quarterback. They gave this kid a lot of money, by the way. If you follow the money trail, I think this is a $257,000 player.
Yeah,
am I right about that?
He's the
top one,
top paid guy.
So with that being said, gut feeling and hopefully, I got to work on this. I got to be a little bit better at my job. But these guys, to me, all appear to have draftable grades, especially the first three that we talked about.
Yeah.
The receiver, the tight end, the safety. I think they've all got that either 5th, 6th kind of round grades.
Yeah.
And that's why those are the first guys they go after when they have the draft board, then they have the priority free agents, then they have just free agents. And, when they get down to that last bit, you don't want to take too many of those guys. You want to get the guys off your draft board. So they do a good job. Chris Hall and those guys do a really good job of the afterwards of getting that second draft. I think Gavin Dawson told me today, was it 25-30% of the rosters made up of the NFL teams are undrafted players.
So for the Cowboys or just all teams?
Just the NFL, yeah.
Teams suck at drafting, Bryan Broaddus. The good kids don't get drafted. The good kids don't get drafted. But this is a very interesting first group of characters, Brian.
Good start, man. Good start. I didn't feel like that any of these kids were others.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get to an others here, but I felt like that if you had to ask me to project, I would say these guys somewhere 5th, 6th round is where I would probably project these guys on their draft board.
Fair enough, Bryan Broaddus. We got 9 players all together. That's 3 down. We're going to do 3 more on Wednesday and 3 more on Friday. So y'all be sure that y'all tap in for those shows. Bryan Broaddus, thank you very much for being part of this, sir.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir. Tomorrow I might make a phone call and see if we do something interesting tomorrow. Me and Bryan Broaddus need to fill the content back up. We ain't running out of things to talk about or nothing like that.
No, we can always talk about. We need to get. I need to get my Rolodex back out.
I was just about to say, Bryan Broaddus,
we need to get the Rolodex out and see if we get some draft content from some of these folks that have had a chance to
do, bro. We're gonna reach out to some people and see if we get some post draft and now. And look, this time I can bring my friends to the party. We can bring about 3 or 4 of my YouTube friends and Brian.
Hey, no, I mean I love your friends and they're my friends too. So, but I love working with it. I love working with everybody. I really do.
We will work on that indeed. VOCHLONBARDI, and that is BRYN Broaddus. He's still not talking to y'all. You are still on punishment, but you can follow him for the day that he takes y'all off.
I gave you horse racing tips. If you follow me on Twitter, I gave you 3 horses. One of the horses finished 1. One of the horses finished 2, and the other one was out of the money. But I did my best to try. And if you follow my horse racing tips, I tried to give you 3 horses to maybe look at, and one of them won, one of them finished second, and the other one was out of the money. So
that's the hard part about you not answering questions. Nobody asked for horse tips questions. They asked about players at the camp.
I love horse racing. I love horse racing. I really do. I love horse racing, and so it was fun. Now watch when the next one turns around, the Preakness and the Belmont. I won't even be close. Here I'm kind of giving it one of these numbers right now, but yeah, exactly.
Brian, one day I'm gonna let you put your arm around me and show me to a car race and a horse race, and just expand.
I'll tell you, we might have to have a day out at Lone Star Park. If we make an announcement, we're going to show up at Lone Star Park.
What that is?
And we all just show up, all the all the people that work on the draft and love the team. We'll just have a time of it betting the ponies.
Okay, so the ponies are at Lone Star. I didn't know where the hell it was. All right, cool.
Yeah,
Well, look,
different horse racing.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll definitely do that one day. But hey, we'll tap in with y'all tomorrow. Y'all be sure to keep your notifications on. We'll see y'all in a little bit. Till next time. Crown.